Hello and welcome back to Library of Ruina Ranked Abnormality Edition. In this video, we'll be going over all of Hokma's abnormalities. This floor has some interesting build routes, so let's get right into it. Starting off in Tier 1, our F tier page is Attention and Focus. This page gives an effect to a single ally that makes them deal and take double stagger damage on deflects. This is a pretty weak effect as deflects are somewhat uncommon, and even when you're building a block focused deck, Bleed Bloody Wings makes the stagger damage less relevant and even a potential downside as it lowers your damage output when you stagger enemies. Also, having the downside of taking double stagger damage is just the icing on this mediocre cake. Next, in D tier, we have Gaze of Others. This page gives an effect to a single ally that makes them deal 2 to 4 extra damage on one-sided attacks, but in a clash, they deal 3 to 6 less damage with attacks, while their block dice gain 1 to 3 power. This page synergizes well with the block focused gameplay as the downside is minimized while the more important effect is maximized. The second effect is also reasonably effective depending on your build. If you're on a single page with multiple offensive dice to attack staggered targets, you get some bonus damage there. But generally in a block focused build, you're gonna not have many offensive dice, so it's mostly just 1 to 3 block dice power with the stipulation that if you're in a non-block build, it's an active detriment. Moving on to C tier, we have Bleed Bloody Wings. This page gives a buff to a single ally that makes their block dice deal damage equal to half the block dice rolled to the opponent on deflect. This is the primary build around for blockman builds, and it's a pretty decent one. Defensive dice naturally roll higher than offensive dice due to not doing damage, so this page breaks the balancing of the game and unlocks a fairly potent build that has somewhat lower damage output but insane clashing. My main gripe with this strategy is that I generally find it worse than just playing standard because of the slower nature of it, meaning enemies can chip you down more and your resource generation is a little bit worse, so also needing to use a page to unlock it does hurt a bit. Our B tier page is the 13th Toll. This page gives a buff to a single ally that gives 1 to 2 extra dice power to every 13th combat page they play, excluding on-play pages. Additionally, the dice will deal % max health bonus damage equal to the roll value on hit. While it takes around 4 scenes to trigger, once it goes, you can get a ton of extra damage, potentially one-shotting enemies if you roll high enough. I think this page is a bit better than Bleed Bloody Wings on the merit of being a page that lets you play standard, but Bleed Bloody Wings is a lot stronger in a blockman build than the 13th Toll is in a standard build. In A tier, we have Baptism. This page has a card, Baptism, to the selected librarian's hand and is added to their deck at the start of future acts. Baptism is a 2-cost on-play page that returns to hand and makes the target recover 6 HP and gain 1 endurance, but only once per target per scene. This is like having a reverse small beak giving HP for light, but it's still quite strong. If you build around this, you can get some pretty insane recovery by having 6+ light regen pages, but even without that, sometimes you need to top someone off and you have the extra light. Beyond that, it has synergy with Advent, which we'll go over later, but even considering that, it's nowhere near our S tier page, which is Time. This page gives a buff to all allies, increasing the power of their dice by 1 to 2, but you only have 30 seconds to select combat pages each scene. This is an insane buff no matter how you slice it. Being a strongest tier 3 page had you split your pages up to get the same buff, and this one just gives it to you for free optimization wise. Of course, the 30-second limit is pretty rough to play with, cutting down on your thinking time, but even with that consideration, it's still an amazing page. A tier 3 effect on a tier 1 page without a gameplay related downside. Moving on to tier 2 pages, our F tier page is Silence. This page has a card, Silence, and a card, Amplify, to the selected librarian's hand and is shuffled into their decks in future acts. Silence is a 0-cost on-play page that makes the user take 15% of their max health as damage to reduce all other characters' speed by 5. Amplify is a 0-cost on-play page that makes the user take 10% of their max health as damage to gain 5 speed. Neither of these pages are very good as speed just isn't very relevant and the price is too high for me to want to take this page. Our D tier page is Martyr. This page adds a card, Martyr, to the user's hand and is shuffled into their deck in future acts. Martyr is a 0-cost on-play page that makes the user deal 4 to 6 bonus stagger damage on hit, but take 1 to 3 damage after each successful attack. This is a reasonably strong effect, but a reasonably powerful downside, and it's temporary. If it was just a permanent 4 to 6 bonus stagger on hit with no downside, it'd be decent, but the combination of having the self-damage downside and being an on-play page make me not like it very much. In C tier, we have a Nostalgic Sound. This page gives a buff to all allies that makes them deal 2 to 4 bonus stagger damage for the scene, and it activates every 3 scenes afterwards. Like Martyr, this page's effect is reasonably strong, but it isn't always active. It's online more often than Martyr and a lot stronger than it, and doesn't have a downside, so it's markedly better, but I'm a bit lower on it than I was in my first couple of playthroughs. Our B tier page is Penance. This page gives a buff to a single ally that makes it so that if any character is staggered at the start of the scene, they take between 3 and 7 damage, and all librarians gain 1 strength for the scene, but multiple staggered characters don't give multiple instances of strength. Like a nostalgic sound, I'm a bit lower on this page than I was before. 1 strength to your entire team is quite strong, but having a staggered character is uncommon enough that it probably won't be active even most of the time. Additionally, you're pretty likely to have multiple enemies staggered at the same time, which wastes effectiveness, and against bosses this will almost never trigger unless there are also trash mobs. Moving on to A tier, we have Confession. This page gives a buff to all allies that makes them take 2 less stagger damage from attacks. Additionally, it fully recovers all stagger resistance and purges all status ailments from allies. I initially had this page in C tier, but as I was looking at a nostalgic sound and penance, I realized that I really don't like those pages. Most of Confession's value comes from the initial effect, and if you're falling behind or against enemies that apply status defects, it's pretty insane. The extra effect is fine I guess, but if you don't need the stagger restoration, I'd take Penance over this. Finally, in S tier, we have Advent. This page gives a buff to a single ally that makes them restore an additional light each scene, and if they have baptism, it doubles the heal and endurance effect to 12 and 2 respectively. Doubling the effectiveness of baptism is quite good, and the extra light per scene is incredible, especially with the menacing that baptism gives you. I quite like these effects together, and it doesn't hurt that the rest of Hokma's tier 2 pages are kind of mediocre. Moving on to tier 3 pages, I put Sentinel in F tier. This page gives a buff to a single ally that makes it so that as long as other allies are alive, the librarian can't be targeted. Additionally, if they're still alive at the end of the fight, each defeated enemy will give you an extra book. We don't particularly care about the extra book, so we're rating this on the attack avoidance, and it's pretty bad. This sounds a bit like Spring's Genesis, but of course, whereas Spring's Genesis will often feel like it does nothing but will make it impossible to lose, Sentinel will often feel like it does nothing, and actually does nothing. Next, I put Divine Power in B tier. This page gives a buff to a single ally that makes it so that while the selected librarian is alive, all other allies gain 2 protection each scene. Additionally, if they used White Knight's Ego page, allies will absorb hits that deal 3 or less damage. Damage absorption is quite powerful and synergizes well with protection, so this is a nice package. It does suffer from a lack of offensive capability, and damage reduction is often worse than healing, so if all your librarians are super low, then it might not be enough to get out of a bad situation. Finally, I put Apostles in S tier. This page gives a buff to a single ally that makes all other allies deal 2 to 7 bonus damage with attacks. Additionally, if they've used Baptism 12 or more times, allies also gain 1 dice power. This is a pretty strong page. Like with time, universal dice power is very strong, and this trigger condition is very achievable, especially since the requirement is you take the best tier 1 and tier 2 page, so no big loss there. I like the offensive slimes of course, so this page gets a nod as the best tier 3, although it's not as good as time is funnily enough. Overall, Hokma's floor is fairly weak. Aside from time, which is hard to use effectively, the pages are all pretty mediocre, so I unfortunately have them rated 10th in my floor rankings. In the next video, we'll be finishing this series with a look at all of Roland's abnormality pages. I'll see you soon, and as always, thank you for watching.